My son thought taking me to a local pub would be nothing more than a light-hearted evening, but the second we stepped inside, the bartender's face went pale. He reached across the counter, grabbed my hand tightly, and whispered something that made my blood run cold. The entire room fell silent, and my son's shocked expression told me this night was about to unravel in ways I could never have imagined. Before I continue, drop your country and watching time in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. And hit the bell for more shocking, emotional, and suspenseful family stories. That evening started off with nothing more than a casual invitation. My son, Daniel, had called me earlier in the week and suggested we go out together. "Dad, let's grab a drink at this local pub near my place. It'll be fun, just the two of us." His voice carried a tone of eagerness, and though I wasn't usually the kind to spend my nights in bars, I didn't want to turn him down. Time with him had grown rarer as he got older, and any chance to connect was something I cherished deeply. As I arrived at his apartment, Daniel looked unusually excited. He joked around as we walked toward the pub, talking about work, his plans, and the upcoming holidays. For me, it felt refreshing, like old times when he was younger, when our conversations weren't strained by adulthood responsibilities. The streets were dimly lit, the air brisk with a cool evening breeze, and I remember thinking how ordinary yet comforting the moment was. The pub itself was modest, brick walls, wooden beams, and a faint smell of hops in the air. A few groups of people laughed over drinks, the faint sound of a jukebox humming in the background. To me, it was just another bar, nothing special. But Daniel's insistence made me curious. Why this place? Out of all the restaurants and cafes nearby, he chose here. I brushed the thought away, assuming he simply liked the atmosphere. When we walked in, the bartender immediately caught my eye. He was a man in his late 40s, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp eyes that scanned the room like a hawk. The second his gaze landed on me, something changed. His cheerful expression faltered, and for a moment it looked like he had seen a ghost. I tried to dismiss it, thinking maybe I resembled someone he knew, but the intensity in his stare said otherwise. Daniel led me to a corner booth, chatting casually, completely unaware of the bartender's reaction, but I couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling. As I settled into the seat, I noticed the bartender kept glancing in our direction, his jaw tightening, his eyes narrowing each time. My instincts told me this wasn't just a coincidence. There was something brewing beneath the surface, and whatever it was connected to me. Daniel ordered a couple of beers, trying to lighten the mood. He leaned in, laughing about his college days, but my attention kept drifting back to the man behind the counter. I could feel the weight of his stare, and each glance sent a shiver down my spine. Something about the way he was watching me wasn't casual. It was deliberate, purposeful, and almost confrontational. I tried to focus on Daniel, to not ruin the night, but my mind kept circling back to one question. Why was this bartender acting like he knew me? As I sat there trying to appear calm, I could sense the bartender's eyes never leaving me. It wasn't just a fleeting glance, it was a stare that carried weight, like he was studying every detail of my face. The conversations around us blurred into background noise. Laughter, clinking glasses, the shuffle of waitstaff, it all felt distant compared to the unspoken tension forming between me and the man behind the bar. Daniel was still chatting away, oblivious to the undercurrent of strangeness. He shared a story about a co-worker, his voice filled with energy. I smiled, nodded, and even laughed when he expected me to, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't tell him what I was feeling. Not yet. I didn't want to sound paranoid or ruin what was supposed to be a fun father-son evening. Then something happened that unsettled me further. The bartender poured a drink for another customer, but his hands trembled slightly, his jaw tightened, and his eyes flicked back toward me as if making sure I hadn't left. When he set the glass down, he wiped his hands on a towel with a sharp, almost aggressive motion. He was rattled by me. But why? I began replaying my past in my mind, scrolling through years of memories. Had I ever been to this pub before? No. Had I met this man somewhere in my younger days? Possibly. I had worked across different states, traveled for business, faces came and went. But this man's reaction wasn't the kind of vague recognition one gets from a stranger. It was personal, intense, like I carried with me a story he couldn't forget. The unease began to seep into Daniel's demeanor, though he didn't know why. He frowned a little when I didn't respond quickly to one of his jokes. "Dad, are you all right? You look distracted," he asked, concern softening his tone. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just a little tired, long day." But Daniel wasn't convinced. He leaned back in the booth, glancing toward the bar himself, and for a second I thought he noticed the bartender's fixed attention. His brows furrowed slightly, but he shook it off, turning back to me as if not wanting to overthink it. I picked up my glass, taking a slow sip, trying to appear normal. The beer was cold, crisp, but it did nothing to ease the tension twisting inside me. Each time I raised my eyes, I found the bartender still staring, and each time the look in his eyes grew heavier. Finally, he disappeared into the back room. For a brief moment, I felt the air lighten, my shoulders relaxing just slightly. But that reprieve didn't last. When he returned, his steps were more deliberate, his face set with grim determination. He walked to the far end of the counter, serving a few customers with forced politeness, but I could sense he was only waiting for the right moment. I shifted uneasily, my heart beginning to beat faster. Something was coming. I didn't know what, but deep down I could feel it. The night wasn't going to stay ordinary for much longer. The uneasy silence between me and the bartender grew heavier with each passing minute. I tried to distract myself by focusing on Daniel's stories. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. Every so often, Daniel's eyes would flick toward the bar, almost as if he was finally noticing the strange atmosphere too. He didn't say anything, but I could see the question forming on his lips. What's going on? I told myself I was overthinking. Maybe the bartender was simply stressed. Maybe I looked like someone he knew, some long-lost relative or an old acquaintance. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. His stare wasn't just recognition. It was laced with something sharper. Anger, fear, regret? I couldn't place it, but it made my stomach churn with unease. Then, in a moment that felt almost cinematic, the bartender set down the glass he was polishing and began to walk toward us. His steps were slow, deliberate, and his gaze never left me. Every instinct in my body told me to prepare, though for what I had no idea. My heart pounded in my chest, the sound drowning out the chatter and music around us. Daniel noticed this time. His posture stiffened and his easy smile faltered. "Dad," he whispered, his voice low, cautious. "Do you know him?" The truth was, I wasn't sure. I wanted to say no, to brush it off, but the intensity in the man's eyes suggested otherwise. Something about me was pulling him in, as though he'd been waiting years for this very moment. The bartender stopped at the edge of our booth, resting one hand on the table. His presence was commanding, his shadow stretching across us under the dim pub lights. "Evening," he said, his voice calm but strangely weighted, like every syllable carried a history. "Evening?" I replied carefully, my voice steady though my palms were sweating. For a second he didn't speak further. He just studied me, his eyes flickering with emotions I couldn't untangle. I noticed Daniel shifting uncomfortably beside me, his protective instincts surfacing. The tension wrapped tightly around us, and the longer the silence stretched, the more unbearable it became. Finally, the bartender leaned slightly closer, his gaze still locked on mine. "I know you," he said quietly. Not a question, a statement. His words carried certainty, finality, as though he had just confirmed something he'd long suspected. Daniel shot me a sharp look, his brows knitting together. "Dad, what's he talking about?" But I had no answer. My throat felt dry, my mind spinning through years of memories, searching desperately for a clue, a connection, anything that would explain this moment. Yet nothing surfaced. The bartender straightened up again, his expression unreadable. He didn't explain, didn't elaborate. He simply gave a tight nod, as though confirming something to himself, then turned away. As he walked back to the bar, the weight of his words hung in the air, pressing down on both me and Daniel. The night had shifted. What had started as a simple outing was now something else entirely, something charged with secrets, recognition, and the heavy anticipation of what was yet to come. Daniel tried to brush it off, forcing a nervous laugh. "Weird guy," he muttered, picking up his glass again. But his voice betrayed him. He was rattled, just like me. The way the bartender had spoken, so certain, so deliberate, wasn't something either of us could ignore. I nodded slightly, pretending to sip my beer, though my mind was spinning faster than ever. I kept replaying those words, "I know you." They echoed in my head, each repetition heavier than the last. What did he mean? Did he actually know me, or was this some strange game? And if he did, from where? My son leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Dad, are you sure you don't know him?" His eyes searched mine, as if trying to read the truth. "I don't think so," I said softly, though the uncertainty in my tone made Daniel's jaw tighten. "At least, not that I remember." That only deepened the tension. Daniel didn't press further, but I could see his mind racing. He shifted uncomfortably in the booth, his protective nature on edge. My son had always been someone who hated uncertainty, and right now we were swimming in it. Across the room, the bartender moved with a strange rhythm, serving drinks, chatting with customers, but every so often, his eyes would flick back to me, lingering just a little too long. It wasn't casual observation. It was watchful, intentional, as though he was waiting for the right time to say more. And then it struck me. He wasn't just observing. He was calculating. The thought sent a chill down my spine. Whatever history tied this man to me, it wasn't benign. If it were, he would have come right out with it. Instead, he was circling me like a predator, savoring the build-up, making me stew in my own confusion. I glanced around the pub, suddenly hyper-aware of every detail. The low hum of conversation, the dim lights casting long shadows across the wooden floors, the faint smell of fried food in the air. Everything seemed sharper, clearer, almost surreal. The atmosphere was too ordinary for the weight of what I was feeling. Daniel noticed my unease. He clenched his jaw and muttered, "If he bothers you again, I'll handle it." His words were protective, but I knew this was bigger than some bar confrontation. This wasn't about rudeness. This was personal. The bartender caught my son's glance and smirked almost knowingly, before turning back to wipe down the counter. It was the kind of smirk that sent another wave of unease coursing through me. He was aware of the effect he was having, and he was in no rush to reveal his hand. I sat back in the booth, my glass untouched, my heart heavy. The questions piled higher with each minute. What did he know about me? What secret was buried so deep that it would make a stranger stop dead in his tracks, look me in the eye and say those words? The answer, I feared, was going to come sooner than I was ready for. The minutes ticked by, each one dragging heavier than the last. Daniel and I sat in silence, pretending to be absorbed in the faint music humming through the pub, but both of us were painfully aware of the bartender's gaze. Every time I lifted my eyes, I caught him watching me again. Calm, deliberate. Finally, Daniel slammed his glass down. "That's it. I'm not just sitting here while he plays whatever game this is." He started to rise, his protective instincts flaring. I reached out and stopped him. "No," I said quietly. "Not yet. Let me handle this." It surprised me, even as the words left my mouth. Normally, I leaned on my son when things got tense. He had inherited his mother's sharpness and could cut through any situation. But something inside me told me this wasn't his battle to fight. This was between the bartender and me. Summoning a steadiness I didn't quite feel, I stood and made my way toward the counter. The wooden floorboards creaked under my weight, each step echoing louder in my ears than the last. When I reached him, the bartender was already waiting, his hands resting casually on the polished surface. "You've got something to say," I told him flatly. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice so that only I could hear. "I was wondering how long it would take before you came over." His lips curled into that same unsettling half-smile. "You really don't remember me, do you?" I stared at him, searching his face, willing some spark of recognition to surface. Nothing. His features were unfamiliar, yet his tone carried the weight of history. "Should I?" I asked cautiously. His smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. "Oh, you should. People don't just forget what you did." The air seemed to thicken around me. My chest tightened. "What I did? The accusation hung in the space between us like a loaded weapon. "I think you've got the wrong man," I managed, though my voice cracked ever so slightly. He shook his head slowly, almost pityingly. "No mistake. You can change your clothes, your hair, your surroundings, but guilt? That doesn't fade." Behind me, I felt Daniel's presence. He'd followed, unwilling to stay seated while I confronted this stranger. His hand brushed my shoulder, a silent show of support. "Dad, what's going on?" he asked firmly, his tone demanding answers. I didn't know what to tell him. My confusion matched his, but the bartender's certainty rattled me to the core. If he was lying, he was a master of it. If he wasn't, then a truth from my past was about to surface, one I wasn't prepared for. The bartender leaned even closer now, his voice a near whisper. "You can play innocent all you want, but I know exactly who you are, and soon, so will he." His eyes flicked deliberately toward Daniel. That single gesture felt like a knife. My stomach dropped. Whoever this man was, whatever he thought he knew about me, he was dragging my son into it. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering. The question wasn't just what he knew anymore. It was when he would decide to reveal it, and whether I was ready for my own child to hear it. Daniel's grip tightened on my shoulder, his confusion evident in the way his voice wavered. "Dad, what is he talking about? Do you know this guy?" I shook my head slowly, though doubt was creeping into my own mind. I've never seen him before in my life, but the firmness in my tone wasn't enough to ease my son's suspicion or my own growing unease. The bartender didn't miss the hesitation. He leaned back now, arms folded across his chest like a man who already knew the ending to a story everyone else was just starting to read. "Funny," he said, his voice carrying easily over the low murmur of the pub. "That's not what you said all those years ago." My throat went dry. Daniel caught it, the way I shifted uncomfortably, the way my eyes darted. He wasn't used to seeing me rattled, and it scared him more than the bartender's cryptic words. "Look," Daniel snapped, stepping forward. "If you've got something to say, then say it. Don't play games." The bartender's lips twitched again. He enjoyed this. He wanted us off balance. "Patience," he murmured. "The truth has a way of tasting better when you've waited for it." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to breathe. My mind was racing, combing through decades of memories, searching for any connection that might explain this man's hostility. A forgotten co-worker, a neighbor, someone tied to mistakes I made when I was younger and reckless. He studied me, tilting his head slightly. "Still nothing, huh? Not even a flicker of recognition?" His tone was mocking, but beneath it I caught something else, bitterness. Deep, old bitterness. Daniel looked between us, his frustration boiling over. "Dad, tell me the truth. Did you do something? Did you hurt someone?" The question hit me like a slap. My own son doubting me. That cut deeper than anything the bartender had said. I turned sharply to him. "Daniel, no. I don't know this man. I don't know what he thinks I did, but it wasn't me." My words came out harsher than I intended, but desperation bled through them. The bartender chuckled lowly. "Oh, but you did. And I can prove it." The entire pub seemed to fall silent in that moment, as if the walls themselves leaned in to listen. The bartender reached beneath the counter, and for a brief second I thought he might pull out a weapon. My heart stuttered. Instead, he set down a small worn photograph. Its edges were frayed, its surface yellowed with age. He slid it across the bar toward me. Daniel and I both leaned in. The moment my eyes landed on the image, my stomach dropped to the floor. The picture showed a younger version of me, no mistaking it. Same jawline, same eyes. But the setting, the context, it didn't make sense. I was standing beside a group of men I didn't recognize, in front of a building that looked like it belonged in a different lifetime. Daniel's eyes widened. That's you." "Dad, that's you." His voice cracked, caught between disbelief and betrayal. I staggered back a step, shaking my head violently. No, Daniel, listen to me. I don't remember this. I don't know these people. The bartender's smirk deepened. "Oh, but I remember, and that's all that matters. You can lie to him, you can lie to yourself, but you can't change the past." The room was spinning now. My mind screamed that this was impossible. That photo must have been doctored, manipulated somehow. But the look in my son's eyes told me that logic wasn't enough. Doubt had already rooted itself, and the bartender knew it. He leaned forward one last time, his voice quiet but venomous. You may have forgotten what you did. But I haven't, and I won't let your son forget it either. The words crashed over me like a wave. My son's trust, fragile, precious, hung in the balance. And in that dimly lit pub with the photo staring back at us, I realized one terrifying truth. Whether guilty or not, my past had just walked through the door, and it wasn't leaving without a fight. Daniel's breathing grew shallow as he stared at the photograph, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the edge of the bar. He looked at me with eyes that were suddenly unfamiliar, eyes that demanded answers I didn't have. Dad, this isn't a joke. That's you, standing right there. What else are you hiding from me? His voice cracked, the tremor betraying both fear and anger. I reached for the photo, but Daniel pulled it closer to himself, as though he was the one who had the right to claim it. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat reminding me that whatever this man's game was, it was working. He had planted seeds of doubt where I could least afford them. Daniel, I said, forcing calm into my voice, listen to me. I swear to you, I don't remember this. That man, I gestured toward the bartender, he's manipulating us. He wants you to question me. Don't let him win. But Daniel wasn't convinced. His jaw tightened. Then explain it. Explain this photo. How can you just not remember something like this? The bartender laughed, low and satisfied. He leaned on the counter, resting his chin on his hand like a predator savoring the panic of its prey. He can't explain it, boy. Because deep down he knows. He's just too much of a coward to admit it. The words dug deep, not because they were true, but because of how Daniel's shoulders slumped, how his eyes flickered between us, as though he was watching a mask slip from his father's face. I slammed my palm on the bar, startling them both. Enough! My voice boomed, trembling with fury and desperation. You don't get to come out of nowhere and destroy my relationship with my son. But the bartender didn't flinch. If anything, he smiled wider. Destroy? No, I'm simply reminding him of who you really are. Daniel swallowed hard. Dad, was there ever a time, maybe before I was born, when you got into something shady? His words stabbed at me. The fact that he even had to ask broke something inside me. I shook my head, my throat tightening. No, son. I was never that man. You know me. But Daniel wasn't sure anymore. The bartender saw it. He thrived on it. He slowly reached into his pocket and my body tensed. But instead of pulling out another photo, he set down a small tarnished locket on the counter. Its chain was knotted, the metal dulled by age. But when he flipped it open, the image inside made Daniel's face pale. It was the same younger version of me, smiling with a woman I didn't recognize, our arms draped around each other, as if we'd shared years of closeness. The woman's face was soft, kind, hauntingly familiar in a way I couldn't quite place. Daniel staggered back. Who is she? My stomach twisted violently. I had no answer. None at all, the bartender whispered, his words dripping with poison. Ask him, boy. Ask him who she is. Ask him why he never told you the truth about the life he abandoned. Daniel's lips parted, but no words came out. He looked at me, his father, the man he had always trusted, like he was staring at a stranger. I took a step forward, reaching out, but he recoiled, clutching the locket as though it were proof of a betrayal he hadn't fully grasped yet. Daniel, I begged, my voice breaking, I don't know this woman. I don't know why he has that photo, please. You have to believe me. But my son didn't respond. His silence was worse than his anger. It was the sound of trust crumbling. The bartender leaned back, satisfied, and whispered so softly it chilled me to the bone. The cracks are showing, and once they spread, they'll never close again. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about some forgotten past. It was about my son's future faith in me. And if I couldn't find a way to fight back, I was about to lose everything. The silence between Daniel and me stretched into something unbearable. The weight of that locket in his hand felt heavier than stone, heavier than any lie or half-truth I'd ever been accused of. He kept staring at it, his brows furrowed, lips pressed tight like he was trying to solve a puzzle that could shatter his entire world. I reached for him again. Daniel, please, just put it down. Don't let this man... But the bartender cut me off with a sneer, still pretending you don't know her. Interesting. Maybe you've buried it so deep that even you can't dig it up anymore. But I remember everything. His voice grew louder, and suddenly the pub, once filled with chatter and laughter, had grown uncomfortably quiet. Strangers were watching us now, leaning closer, pretending to sip their drinks while their eyes devoured the drama unfolding. Daniel looked around, embarrassed. "Stop," he hissed, his voice cracking. "Why are you doing this?" "Who are you?" The bartender's eyes flickered, but instead of answering directly, he produced yet another relic from his pocket. This time it was a folded letter, creased and yellowed with age. He placed it carefully on the counter like a sacred offering. "Read it," he urged. Daniel unfolded the paper with trembling hands. His eyes scanned the words, and I watched the color drain from his face. His lips moved silently, reading parts of the letter aloud. "To my dearest, I can't bear the thought of losing you. If they find out about us, it will ruin everything. But I promise one day we'll have the life we dreamed of." Daniel's hands shook as he lowered the letter. He looked at me, his face twisted in confusion and pain. This is in your handwriting." My heart dropped. I leaned forward, grabbing the letter, scanning the lines in disbelief. It did look like my handwriting. Almost identical. The loops, the curves, even the way the ink bled in places. But I had never written this. I knew I hadn't. "It's a forgery," I snapped, my voice rising in desperation. "Daniel, listen to me. Someone wants to destroy us. This isn't real." The bartender chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, you always were a good liar." "Even back then." Daniel pressed his palms into his temples, overwhelmed. His breathing quickened, his chest rising and falling as though he were about to suffocate. "I don't know what to believe anymore. This is insane." I wanted to grab him, to shake him, to make him see reason. But the fear in his eyes told me that force would only drive him further away. The bartender leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. "You can deny it all you want, but the evidence speaks louder than your words. And your son, your precious son, he deserves the truth." Something inside me snapped. I slammed both hands on the bar, making glasses rattle. "Enough, you don't know me. You don't know my life." My voice shook with rage, but also with something worse, fear. Because deep inside, a small part of me wondered, what if? What if my past held shadows I'd forgotten? Mistakes buried so deep that they only resurfaced now. Daniel's eyes glistened, torn between the man who raised him and the man the bartender was painting me to be. The uncertainty carved deep lines into his young face. "Dad," he whispered. Just one word, but filled with so much doubt, so much pleading. I froze. I didn't know if he was begging me to tell the truth or begging me to stop lying. The bartender smiled, sensing victory. "You see, boy? The silence tells you everything. He's not the man you thought he was." The pub's dim light flickered across Daniel's trembling hands as he clutched the letter and the locket. The bartender's cruel grin widened, savoring every second of my son's unraveling trust. And in that crushing silence, I realized this nightmare had only one direction left to go, straight into the heart of the truth, whether I was ready for it or not. The pub air felt suffocating, heavy with unspoken accusations and raw tension. Daniel stood frozen, clutching both the letter and the locket like they were physical proof of a crime I didn't even know I was accused of. His lips trembled as if he wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The silence stretched so long that it felt like the whole room was holding its breath, waiting for the next blow to land. I forced myself to take a step toward him. "Daniel, son, you have to listen to me." "Don't," he snapped, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. His eyes were glassy, filled with pain, suspicion, and something worse, betrayal. "Just don't. I don't know who you are right now." That cut deeper than any blade. The bartender leaned across the bar, resting his hands like a judge about to hand down a sentence. His voice was calm, but there was venom in every syllable. "He doesn't want to admit it, boy, but the truth is right in front of you. He lived a double life. He had someone else before you were even part of the picture. And you were never meant to know." Daniel's head snapped toward me, eyes blazing. "Is that true? Did you have another family? Another life you just walked away from?" "No!" I shouted, my chest heaving. "Daniel, I swear to you, I never abandoned anyone. I don't know this man, I don't know this woman, and I certainly never wrote that letter." But the bartender wasn't done. He pulled out one last object, tucked carefully into his apron. A faded ID card, cracked down the middle but still legible. He slapped it on the counter with finality. My blood ran cold. The photo on the ID was me, or at least it looked like me. The same face, only younger, harder, sharper. But the name beneath it wasn't mine. Daniel picked it up, staring, his hands trembling so violently the card nearly slipped. This is you. Dad, this is your face. I shook my head violently, panic clawing at my throat. It's not me. Daniel, look at the name. That's not my name. This is some kind of setup, the bartender smirked. Or maybe it was your name, before you decided to reinvent yourself, before you left everything behind. The room tilted. My legs felt weak. And the worst part, a flicker of doubt sparked in my own mind. The face in the ID wasn't just similar, it was identical. What if there were parts of my past I truly couldn't remember? Daniel stepped back from me like I was a stranger. All these years you told me you were honest. You told me you built our life from nothing. And now I don't know what to believe. The pain in his voice was unbearable. I reached out, desperate. Son, please, you have to trust me. You're all I have. But the bartender's voice sliced through like a knife. No, boy. You're not all he has. You're just the one he chose to keep. The words detonated between us, shattering what little stability remained. Daniel staggered backward, his chest rising and falling in jagged bursts. His gaze darting between me and the bartender like he was drowning, and neither of us could save him. And in that terrible, suffocating moment, I realized the truth didn't even matter anymore. Whether or not I was guilty, whether or not the evidence was forged, the damage was already done. My son's faith in me was slipping through my fingers, and there was nothing more terrifying than watching it happen in real time. Daniel's fingers trembled as he held the cracked ID card, his knuckles turning white. He kept looking from the photo to me, back and forth, like he was trying to force the pieces of a puzzle together. His voice was low, almost broken. This can't be fake. That's you. I don't care what name is printed here. That's your face. Tell me the truth, Dad. Did you live a life I never knew about? I shook my head so hard it made me dizzy. No. Daniel, listen to me. I don't know where this came from. This man is twisting everything. He wants to break us apart. The bartender let out a cold laugh, the kind that made the hairs on my arms stand up. Break you apart? You don't need my help for that. You've done a fine job lying to your son all by yourself. I slammed my fist on the bar, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Enough, I have never lied to him. Not once in my life. But even as the words left my mouth, I caught the flicker in Daniel's eyes. Doubt. Not once, Daniel whispered, his jaw tightening. You said you were always honest. But when I was a kid, I asked about your childhood, your parents, your past, and you always dodged it. You always said it didn't matter. Was it because you didn't want me to know? The accusation cut like a blade. My throat tightened. No, I just didn't want you to grow up carrying my burdens. That's all. The bartender leaned forward, his voice dropping into a cruel whisper. Or maybe you didn't want him to know the kind of man you really were. Isn't that right? Daniel's chest rose and fell rapidly, his hands gripping the ID card and the letter like they were burning him. His eyes glistened, anger and heartbreak colliding. Dad, he said, his voice trembling, I need you to swear to me, swear on everything, that none of this is true. I stepped closer, staring directly into his eyes. Daniel, I swear. On my life, on yours, on everything we've ever shared, I don't know that woman. I didn't write that letter. And that ID, it isn't me. For a moment there was silence. Daniel's breathing slowed, and I thought maybe, just maybe, the storm was passing. But then the bartender spoke again, each word deliberate like hammer strikes on fragile glass. Do you know why I'm so certain? He reached beneath the counter once more and pulled out a thin leather-bound notebook. He slid it across the bar with a sick smile. Because this belonged to you. My blood froze. Daniel snatched it up before I could react. He opened the cover, flipping through the pages filled with notes, names, addresses, and journal entries. The handwriting, it was identical to mine. His face paled. Dad, these are your words, your handwriting. This is you. How can you deny it? I grabbed the notebook, my hands shaking as I flipped through the pages. The writing looked like mine, but the content, dark plans, coded messages, cryptic references to things I didn't understand, it was like reading a stranger's twisted mind. I shook my head violently. This isn't mine. Someone forged this. It has to be. Daniel, you know me. You know my heart. You know I would never... but he pulled away from me, clutching the letter and the ID card against his chest. "I don't know anything anymore." His voice cracked and tears spilled down his cheeks. The bartender's grin widened, his victory clear. "He's finally seeing you for what you really are. And once the truth is out, there's no going back." I reached out desperate, but Daniel staggered back like my touch would burn him. His breathing was shallow, panicked, his eyes wild with betrayal. In that moment I realized the fight wasn't just for the truth, it was for my son's soul. And right now I was losing. Daniel's chest heaved as he clutched the notebook, his knuckles white from the force of his grip. His eyes darted over the pages again and again, desperate to find something, anything, that would prove this wasn't real. But every word, every curve of ink screamed my handwriting. He turned to me, his voice shaking, raw with emotion. "Dad, how do I look at this and not believe it's you? This isn't some random scribble. These are thoughts, plans, names. How could someone fake something so detailed?" I held my ground, though my insides churned like a storm. "Because they want to destroy me, Daniel. That's why. Everything here, it's planted, fabricated. You've got to believe me." But the bartender's voice slid in like venom. "Fabricated? You really think you can explain away years of history with one desperate lie? That's the problem with men like you. You think the truth can stay buried forever. But it always comes back." The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the old ceiling fan above us. The tension was suffocating. My son was unraveling before my eyes, and I couldn't stop it. Daniel slammed the notebook shut, his face twisting. "Then tell me, who are you? If this isn't yours, if that ID isn't you, if that woman isn't part of your past, then what is the truth?" The words tore through me like shrapnel. He wasn't just asking a question, he was begging. Begging for something real to hold on to before the floor completely gave out beneath him. "I am your father," I said firmly, my voice rising. "I raised you. I loved you. I built everything we have with my own 2 hands. That is the truth. Whatever this man is spinning, it's a lie. It has to be." But even as I said it, doubt crept into my own mind. The ID, the letter, the locket, the notebook. One coincidence maybe, but all of them together. It was like staring into a distorted mirror of a past I couldn't recognize. The bartender leaned forward, lowering his voice into something sharp, sinister. "Tell him the rest. Tell him about the woman in the photograph. Tell him about the nights you disappeared. Tell him why you changed your name." "I never did those things," I roared, slamming the notebook back onto the bar. The sound echoed, making several people in the pub flinch. Daniel recoiled, his breathing shallow, tears streaking his face. "Then why can't you prove it? Why can't you give me anything that makes this make sense?" My chest tightened like a vice. He was right. All I had were denials, desperate words that grew thinner with every accusation. And the bartender knew it. The man's grin stretched wider as he reached for something under the bar. For a moment my heart stopped. I thought he might pull a weapon. Instead he placed down a dusty envelope, sealed and marked with a date from nearly 30 years ago. "Open it," he whispered. Daniel tore it open with shaking hands. Inside were more photographs, dozens of them. Some showed the same woman as before, smiling, standing next to a man who looked exactly like me. Others showed him holding a small child I didn't recognize. Daniel's hands shook violently as he dropped the photos onto the counter. His face was pale, his eyes wide, his lips trembling. "Dad, this is you." With another family, my blood turned to ice. I staggered back, my mind spinning. I had never seen those photos before in my life, and yet there I was, smiling, laughing, living a life that didn't belong to me. "No," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Daniel, I swear to you, I don't know these people. That's not me. It can't be, but the damage was done." The bartender's smirk told me he had me exactly where he wanted, and Daniel's shattered expression told me that whether I was guilty or not, the truth didn't matter anymore because, in his eyes, I was already guilty. The pub seemed to close in on me, the walls pressing tighter, the air turning heavier with every second. Daniel's face, so pale, so broken, was a reflection I never wanted to see. He stood frozen, clutching those photographs like they were shards of glass cutting into his palms. My voice cracked as I reached for him. "Daniel, listen to me, please. Those photos, that notebook, it's all orchestrated. Someone wants to tear us apart. You know me, look at me. I'm your father. I've never lied to you about who I am." But the words hung limp, powerless. The bartender leaned on the counter, eyes glinting with satisfaction. You think words will save you? After decades of silence, after building your life on a stolen identity? I shot him a glare sharp enough to cut steel. Why are you doing this? Who are you to us? For the first time his smirk faltered. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened, and when he spoke his voice was like gravel dragged across stone. You really don't remember me, do you? Daniel blinked, startled. Remember you? What do you mean? The bartender slammed his fist onto the bar, rattling the glasses. You ruined my family. He spat, his face flushing red. You left her, my sister, broken, abandoned with a child. You walked away and built a shiny new life while she died alone. And now you stand here pretending innocence. My stomach dropped like a stone. His words hit me with the force of a hurricane. Sister? A child dead? None of it made sense, yet the fire in his eyes screamed conviction. Daniel's gaze whipped back to me, eyes wide, pleading. Dad, is this true? Did you abandon someone? Did you have another family? No! I roared louder than I intended. My voice thundered through the room, silencing even the murmurs of curious onlookers. I never knew your sister. I never had another family. This is madness. But the bartender only sneered, sliding another object across the bar, a birth certificate. My blood ran cold as Daniel picked it up. His hands trembled as he read the name aloud. Father's name, Richard Allen, the world spun. Richard Allen, my name, my exact name. Daniel's knees buckled as he staggered back. It's you. It has to be you. How many Richard Allens can there be? Tears burned my eyes. Daniel, listen to me. Do you think I'd keep something like this from you? Do you think I'd let you grow up in a lie? If I had another family, if I had done this, I'd tell you. But this isn't me. This is someone else. Someone trying to erase me. Daniel's lip quivered. His voice was barely a whisper. But Dad, the photos, the documents, the ID, it's all you. My hands shook as I slammed them onto the bar, desperation flooding my veins. Then answer me this, Daniel. If I had another family, where are they now? Where is this supposed son? Where is this sister he speaks of? Why hasn't anyone come forward until tonight? The question hung heavy, slicing through the thick silence. For the first time, the bartender's expression cracked. His eyes flickered just for a second with something, hesitation. I caught it. And so did Daniel. He looked between us, torn apart, his loyalty hanging by a thread. Someone's lying, he whispered. But I don't know who anymore. The bartender leaned in close, his whisper sharp enough for only me to hear. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. Tonight your son doubts you, and that's all I ever wanted. My heart dropped into darkness, because I realized in that moment the damage was already done and nothing, no truth, no proof could undo it. The silence after the bartender's venomous whisper was deafening. It felt as though the entire pub held its breath, the weight of his words pressing down on my shoulders like iron chains. Daniel stood frozen, his knuckles white around the birth certificate, his chest heaving with ragged breaths. The man I had raised, the boy I had held through storms and sleepless nights, now stared at me with an uncertainty that tore my soul apart. I tried to step closer, but Daniel flinched ever so slightly, as if my presence itself was suffocating. That tiny motion gutted me more than the bartender's accusations. I had faced losses, betrayals, and heartbreaks in my life, but seeing doubt replace trust in my own son's eyes was a wound deeper than anything else. Daniel, I whispered, my throat dry, I need you to trust me, please, you've known me your whole life. Every story I told, every moment we shared. You know who I am. His lips parted, but no sound came out. He looked down at the paper again, his mind clearly at war with itself. The bartender smirked in triumph, pouring himself a drink as if he'd just won the final round of a long battle. I turned to him, fury bubbling under my skin. Why are you doing this? What's your real goal here? If you think you're avenging some long-forgotten wound, you're not just hurting me. You're destroying an innocent man's trust in his father. He leaned casually against the counter, his voice dripping with malice. Innocent? That's a word men like you love to hide behind. Maybe it wasn't you directly. Maybe it was your brother, your cousin, or someone with your cursed name. But the legacy of pain still carries your face. And tonight your son got to see it. Daniel finally spoke, his voice trembling. Dad, is it possible? Could there really be another Richard Allen? Someone else out there who did this? I grabbed his shoulders firmly, forcing him to meet my gaze. Yes, Daniel. That's exactly what I've been saying. Do you think I'd build my life on a foundation of lies, only to have it crumble now? If I had secrets, don't you think they would have surfaced long ago? Why now? Why here? The fire in my voice startled him, but I saw something flicker in his eyes, a fragile thread of belief trying to weave itself back together. For the first time that night, I saw the boy who used to run to me when he scraped his knee, the young man who once said, "Dad, you're my hero." But before he could respond, the bartender slammed his drink onto the counter. You think words will fix this? No, words won't erase bloodlines or grief or graves. The truth is already written. He shoved another envelope toward Daniel, this one thicker, heavier. Daniel hesitated before ripping it open. Inside were more documents, faded photographs, handwritten letters, and what looked like legal papers connecting my name to a woman I'd never met. I felt my stomach twist. My pulse hammered. Each photograph showed a man, similar build, similar haircut, standing beside a woman and child. The resemblance was uncanny, but deep in my gut I knew it wasn't me. The eyes were different. The smile wasn't mine. Daniel's fingers trembled as he pulled out the last page, a letter signed again by Richard Allen. His voice cracked as he read the first line aloud. "I'm sorry for leaving. I never meant to break your heart, but I had to move on." Gasps erupted from nearby patrons who had been eavesdropping. The bartender crossed his arms, satisfaction plastered across his face. I stepped forward, my voice sharp and steady despite the chaos clawing at my insides. "Daniel, listen to me. These are forgeries, lies. Look at the details. Look closely. The handwriting isn't mine. The man in those photos isn't me. This is a trap." Daniel's breathing quickened. He glanced from the photos to me, then to the bartender, his face caught between fury and despair. His loyalty was a pendulum swinging violently between two poles, and I knew if I didn't anchor him soon, I'd lose him forever. The room suddenly felt colder. Conversations around us resumed in hushed whispers, the air thick with judgment and curiosity. I could feel the weight of strangers' eyes piercing into me, their silent verdicts already forming. I clenched my fists, summoning every ounce of strength left in me. "Daniel," I said firmly, "you have to decide. Do you believe a stranger who walked into our lives tonight with a bag of papers? Or do you believe the man who raised you, protected you, and stood by your side every single day of your life?" His face crumpled. Tears pooled in his eyes as he choked out, "I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore." And in that moment I realized this battle was no longer about me proving my innocence. It was about saving the bond between father and son before it shattered completely. Daniel's words, "I don't know what to believe anymore," cut deeper than any blade could. My chest ached, not from anger, but from the sheer helplessness of watching the boy I raised teeter on the edge of trust and betrayal. For decades I had been his anchor. Now I was just another man he wasn't sure he could lean on. I took a shaky breath. "Daniel, when you were 6, you broke your arm climbing that oak tree in our backyard. You were terrified, crying, but who stayed by your hospital bed all night, whispering stories until you fell asleep? When you were 16 and thought you weren't good enough for college, who told you you'd prove everyone wrong, and you did? Who was there when you first got your heart broken, sitting in the car listening, saying nothing, because sometimes silence was all you needed?" His lips quivered. I could see the memories flickering in his eyes, like fading light bulbs trying desperately not to burn out. The bartender scoffed. "Nice speech. Emotional even. But love doesn't erase bloodlines. You can't run from who you are, Richard. That paper doesn't lie." He jabbed a finger toward the documents scattered on the bar. The photos, the letters, the birth certificate, they lay like poisoned evidence, each piece carefully designed to erode the foundation of our bond. I forced myself to stay calm. Paper can be forged, photos can be manipulated, identities can be stolen. But memories don't lie. Ask yourself, Daniel, does any of this feel like the man you've known your entire life? Daniel shook his head slowly, but then clutched the papers tighter. "It doesn't. But how do I explain this?" "Why does everything point to you?" "Because someone wants it to," I said sharply. "Because someone decided that destroying me wasn't enough. They wanted to destroy us. And you're letting them win if you give in to this doubt." For the first time that night, Daniel's voice cracked with anger. "But how do I fight this, Dad? How do I look at a birth certificate with your name on it and tell myself it's fake? How do I ignore photos that look just like you? Tell me what to do, because I don't know anymore." His outburst silenced the pub again. Dozens of strangers stared at us, their curiosity mixing with discomfort, like they were watching a family crumble in real time. I stepped closer, ignoring the heat in my eyes and the lump in my throat. "You do what you've always done, son. You trust your heart. And deep down, I know your heart knows the truth." Daniel's hands trembled. He looked at me, then at the bartender. The weight of his indecision was suffocating. He was drowning in lies, and I was desperately reaching out, praying he'd grab my hand. But the bartender wasn't finished. He leaned closer to Daniel, his voice low, calculated. "Do you really want to risk it? What if he's been lying to you all along? What if everything he's told you, your childhood, your life, was built on deception? Can you live with that uncertainty, Daniel? Or is it safer to believe the evidence in front of your eyes?" Daniel staggered back like the words were physical blows. His chest heaved, his face pale. "Stop, just stop," he muttered. "Both of you." I can't breathe. I wanted to reach for him, to hold him like I had when he was small, but the fear of him pulling away kept me frozen. My heart shattered with the realization this wasn't just a battle for the truth anymore. It was a battle for my son's soul. The bartender smirked, pouring himself another drink. "See, he's breaking. He's realizing who you really are." "No," I snapped, my voice sharp with defiance. "So he's realizing the weight of betrayal, even if it's false, and you're feeding on it like a vulture." Daniel pressed his palms against his head, shaking violently like he was trying to shut out the noise. Tears streaked down his face as he whispered, "I don't know who to believe. I don't know what's real anymore." My own tears blurred my vision, but I forced my voice steady. "Believe in us, Daniel. Not in documents. Not in strangers. Believe in the bond we've built with every moment of our lives together. Because if that doesn't matter, then nothing does." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. For a fleeting second I thought I saw it, resolve returning to his eyes, a fragile spark of recognition. But before he could speak, the bartender slammed his glass down again, his voice slicing through the air. "Or maybe, Daniel, the real question isn't whether your father is lying. The question is..." Daniel's face was pale, his breath shallow, his hands trembling as though the papers themselves carried poison. My own heart hammered in my chest, the bartender's words echoing with cruel precision. "What else has he hidden from you?" I knew that line was calculated. It wasn't about truth anymore. It was about planting seeds of doubt so deep that even if I proved my innocence, Daniel would still question me. And that terrified me more than anything. I steadied myself, forcing my voice calm. "Daniel, I've never hidden anything from you. Yes, I've made mistakes in life, as every man does. But I never lied about who I am. I never lied about being your father. That is the one truth that no forged document, no photograph, no stranger can ever erase." But Daniel shook his head, his voice trembling. "But if someone could create all this, then what else could they create? What if my whole life has been manipulated? What if I don't even know who I really am?" The bartender smirked, circling him like a predator scenting blood. "Exactly. Maybe your father isn't the man you think he is. Maybe you're not even who you believe yourself to be. Bloodlines don't lie, Daniel. Paper trails don't lie. But fathers can. Stop," I roared, slamming my fist on the bar. The glasses rattled, a sharp crack of defiance cutting through the bartender's venom. "Stop poisoning his mind. You're not here for justice. You're here for revenge. Tell him the truth. What do you really want from us?" For a flicker of a second, the bartender's smirk faded. His eyes hardened. He leaned closer, his words seething with bitterness. "What I want you to feel what she felt. Alone, abandoned, forgotten. I want him, your precious son, to look at you and see a liar, because that's what you did to her." My pulse froze. "Who is her?" I demanded. "Name her. Tell me who you think I wronged." But he only shook his head slowly, savoring the torment. "You already know." Daniel stepped back, his face twisted with pain. "Dad, tell me, is there any truth to this? Anyone from your past? Any woman? Any possibility?" I swallowed hard, the weight of decades pressing down on me. My mind searched, desperate to find a connection, a thread, something that could explain this, but there was nothing. No hidden affairs, no secret children, nothing, and yet. The documents, the photographs, the venom in this man's voice, it all blurred the line between truth and lies. I swear to you, Daniel, I said, my voice breaking, there is nothing. No other family, no other life. This is a fabrication designed to destroy us. Daniel's shoulders slumped, his body trembling like a leaf in a storm. He pressed his palms into his eyes, tears seeping through his fingers. I want to believe you, Dad. I really do. But how do I erase what I've seen? How do I pretend this doesn't exist? I reached out, my hand hovering inches from his shoulder. You don't erase it. You fight it, together. We find out who forged these lies, who's behind this, and we take our truth back. For a heartbeat, Daniel looked at me, his expression fractured but softening. I saw the boy who once trusted me with blind faith flicker in his eyes again. But before I could breathe relief, the bartender struck again. Fight it together? He sneered. Tell me, Daniel, how do you fight a shadow that wears your father's face? How do you fight the blood in your veins? You think lies just appear? No, lies are born from truth. And deep down you already know this truth. You feel it, don't you? Daniel staggered back, clutching his chest. His lips trembled as he whispered, I don't know what to feel anymore. The bartender leaned in, his words sharp as knives. Then let me help you feel the truth. He abandoned her. He left her with nothing. And now he's doing the same to you. History repeats, Daniel, always. The room spun with tension so thick I could barely breathe. My son's tears, the bartender's venom, the stranger's stares. It all blurred into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. But one thing was clear. If I didn't find a way to shatter this man's hold on Daniel, I was going to lose my son forever, and that was a battle I could not afford to lose. The pub had grown colder, as if the walls themselves absorbed the venom that had been poured into the room. The clinking of glasses, the murmurs of strangers, even the faint hum of music in the background felt distant, irrelevant. All that mattered now was my son, standing between me and the bartender, his heart being pulled in two directions. Daniel's breathing was shallow, his eyes darting from me to the bartender like he was trapped between two fires. I could see him breaking, not because of any evidence, but because the man in front of us had planted doubt where certainty once lived. And doubt, I knew, was harder to fight than any accusation. I stepped forward, ignoring the tremor in my voice. Daniel, listen to me. He doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about us. He wants to destroy me, and he's using you as the weapon. That's not justice, that's cruelty. But the bartender's smirk widened. Funny how cruelty sounds a lot like truth when it finally catches up to you. You can deny papers, photos, letters, but can you deny the fear in your son's eyes right now? That's the proof I needed. Daniel flinched as though struck. His hands shook as he clutched the envelope tighter, crumpling the papers inside. His voice cracked. I can't do this. I don't know who to believe. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to force him to see me. Not the lies, not the forged past, but me. The father who taught him how to ride a bike, who stayed up nights helping him study, who held him through storms both literal and emotional. I swallowed hard. Daniel, you don't have to choose tonight. But I beg you, don't let a stranger rewrite our history. Whatever you've read, whatever you've seen, it doesn't erase the life we've lived together. That is real. That is us. For the first time, Daniel's eyes softened, glistening with unshed tears. He opened his mouth to speak, but the bartender cut in sharply. History always repeats itself, he hissed. He left her. He'll leave you. Wait and see. That final blow sent Daniel spiraling. He stumbled back, covering his face with his hands, sobbing quietly. The sight broke me. My son crushed between loyalty and doubt, unable to find solid ground. I turned on the bartender, rage boiling in my veins. Enough! I thundered. You've made your point. You've poisoned his mind. But mark my words, you will not break us. You can fabricate lies, you can twist the past, but you will not take my son from me. The bartender only laughed low and bitter, the sound echoing through the pub. We'll see. The room fell into silence again. Daniel lowered his hands, his face streaked with tears, his expression hollow. He looked at me, then at the bartender, and finally down at the papers still shaking in his grip. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I need time. The words gutted me, but I nodded slowly. because I knew forcing him would only push him further away. "Take all the time you need," I said softly, my heart breaking with each word. "I'll be here. I'll always be here." Daniel turned away, his shoulders hunched, his steps unsteady as he walked toward the door. The bartender's smirk lingered, a silent victory etched into his face. But I refused to accept defeat, because even as my son walked away, clutching lies in his hands, I held on to the one truth I could never let go of. He was mine. My son, my blood, my heart. And no matter how deep this man buried us in doubt, I would fight until my last breath to bring him back to the truth. The pub doors creaked shut behind Daniel, leaving me standing in the echo of everything that had just unfolded. The battle wasn't over. In fact, I knew it was only beginning. But one thing was certain. I was not going to lose my son to a lie. I want to pause for just a moment and talk directly to you. If you've made it this far into the story, it means you're hooked by the emotions, the drama, and the shocking twists that are unfolding. And I promise you the best is yet to come. But here's the deal. I need your support to keep sharing these unbelievable real-life stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. So take 2 seconds and smash that subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss another episode, and give this video a big like if you're enjoying it so far. It really helps me out more than you know. Also, let's make this interactive. Drop your country name and the exact time you're watching this in the comments below. I love seeing where my audience is tuning in from around the world, and I often feature the most interesting ones in future videos. So go ahead, do it right now, and let's dive back into the story. You don't want to miss what comes next.